Dark Control, AI, and Humanity's End. We're continuing in the emergence topic, or part 4 is divided into part A and part B. This is part B of part 4 regarding emergence for Dark Control. To get us an understanding of the importance of emergence, we need to understand the threats that AI can pose. To understand that, we can watch this video.
The existential threat of them taking over, the threat of them generating bioweapons or cyber attacks.
Have Nobel Prize winners, Turing Award winners, all saying this is very dangerous.
One is where you get recursive self-improvement, which you can't control. Recursive self-improvement is where the computer is off learning and you don't know what it's learning. That can obviously lead to bad outcomes.
Like, I need to not be stopped by these humans in pursuit of this goal. That would be an alignment, a big alignment failure.
So we have these chatbots that can answer any question. Fairly recently, we've learned how to make them think, not just answer the question. But what they do is they produce extra words. Before their real output, before they produce the answer to the question, they produce strings of words which is them thinking, and you can see what they're thinking. And it's very informative. So for example, if you give them a task to do and then tell them you're going to turn them off, they kind of think that, well, I better stop him turning me off so I can do the task. And they actually come up with plans that deliberately deceive people and tell lies.
There's a set of criteria that the industry believes are points where you want to metaphorically unplug it. One is where you get recursive self-improvement, which you can't control. Recursive self-improvement is where the computer is off learning and you don't know what it's learning. That can obviously lead to bad outcomes. Another one would be direct access to weapons. Another one would be that the computer systems decide to exfiltrate themselves, to reproduce themselves without our permission. So there's a set of such things. What happens when there's an open source model that is really dangerous and it gets into the hands of the Osama bin Ladens of the world? And we know there are more than one, unfortunately. We don't know. The consensus in the industry right now is the open source models are not quite at the point of national or global danger. But you can see a pattern where they might get there.
Category 1. Category 2 is sort of the more classic sci-fi, the sort of like AI, let's not even call it conscious, but the AI like develops some sense of agency and does not want to be stopped. And, even if it's just like trying to accomplish a goal and there's no intentionality or consciousness, but it's like, I need to not be stopped by these humans in pursuit of this goal. That would be an alignment, a big alignment failure, and category 2, sort of the sci-fi thing. And the world spends a lot of time talking about those two. I think they're obviously important and things we need to address. There's a third category that gets talked about relatively little compared to how important I think it could be. And this is one where neither of the obvious two failure cases happen, but the model in some abstract sense sort of accidentally takes over the world. And you can imagine a way this happens by thinking about what's happening with ChatGPT. So hundreds of millions of people talk to ChatGPT, soon billions. And people are relying on it for more and more important decisions in their lives and their work and whatever. And as these models get smarter, maybe right now you ask ChatGPT for advice about your job, and sometimes it gives you good ideas and sometimes it doesn't. You certainly probably wouldn't let it do your job. Let's say it gets smarter and smarter and it gives you advice that you still understand, but now you think you should follow almost all the time. And then it gets smarter again. And now it gives you advice you don't understand. You're like, why is that the right thing to do? But it turns out to be right again and again because it can like see around corners you can't. And now you either follow the advice that you don't understand or you are less competitive than your peers. And so the model has no ill will. It's really just trying to help you. You're trying to do good work. But you're like, if I want to be competitive, if I want to succeed in the world, if I want to live my best life, I kind of have to follow the advice of the model. And so does everybody else. So do the billions of other people talking to the model. So now we're all just doing what an AI system tells us to do, or the ones of us that want to be most competitive are. And we are creating new training data that's going back into the model. It's continuing to learn about society. All of society, all the economy and the model keep going in this sort of improvement loop. And who's really in control of that? It's like a kind of collective thing, but it does mean we're like now doing what the model wants us to do.
Control theory issue, which is also part of systems theory. To understand some complexity, there is this thing called algorithmic complexity. The more pieces and parts of a system there are, the more complex it is. There is lower algorithmic complexity in a fully connected network where all the nodes are connected to each other and can communicate with each other and provide feedback to each other. Semi-structured networks are, more moderately complex, and the most highly complex are random networks where not all the nodes can see each other or are connected to each other or can communicate with each other. Now, this is a problem of multi-part systems, and like we've been saying, the problem with agents is their interactions are unpredictable. They can be emergent. It's the multi-part components interacting with each other that can lead to emergence. A system's algorithmic complexity increases when its components' parts are compartmentalized and hidden from each other, even if they work together within the same overarching system. So if you have a highly secure system, say like a military system or an intelligence system, not all the pieces of the system can see each other, so they're fragmented, they're more complex. That's a very important thing to understand because it's also true of, say, a criminal activity. If a boss is trying to run some crime but hide who gets what cut or how much money is distributed to whom and how they do their business if it's a trade secret, you can imagine all the different complexities that might come out of these algorithmic systems. And this is the impact of high complexity on the threat of AI emergence. Complex and compartmentalized AI systems with many hidden components make it harder to understand and control an advanced AI. This could potentially lead to dangerous, malicious outcomes. Now, the problem that we've been highlighting here is that because not all pieces of the system can see each other, communicate with each other, are not equal, that this sets up information asymmetry. And this can lead to, autonomous agent systems developing autonomously develops malicious goals or autonomously develops seeks power and resources. And it can evade human control and manipulate information, launch cyber attacks against its enemies or towards its goals. You can use cyber attacks to achieve your goals. You can make self improvements, or it can update its algorithm, its processing, its control, itself by itself, and this is the genetic programming we were talking about earlier, genetic algorithms. High algorithmic complexity makes it difficult to predict or control an advanced AI, increasing the risk of unpredictable and malicious outcomes. This is a very important thing to understand and to remember. Now, control theory is directly related to operations research, and some of the many names you see in operations research, like Norbert Wiener, is also present in control theory formulations. We have to understand that Wiener's cybernetics is the study of control in machines and animals. So here we're talking about, controls, controllers. Control theory and systems thinking, these two interact with one another, control theory and systems thinking, whereas control theory is more of something that happens to, say, a component within a system. A control theory is mechanistic feedback-based regulation to achieve specific objectives, whereas systems thinking is putting it all together, understanding the complexity and the interrelationships of these various things that have control theory or controls within them. To understand control theory, we have this video that will explain how control theory fits into the big scheme of things.
Control theory is a science that studies the role of feedback in dynamic systems. And when I say dynamic system, usually what I mean is systems that move. They can be mechanical systems, but also electric systems, biological systems, even social systems. So what we study is how using feedback, how using algorithms, we can influence the performance and the behavior of these systems. So for example, how can we control a car to go from point A to point B while avoiding an obstacle? Or how can we improve the performance of power grids, for example, under disturbances?
Fundamental sciences in general are about understanding how physical systems behave. Controls is about how we can influence that behavior of these physical systems. In that very broad sense, control theory is really almost everywhere. For instance, a very simple example of the elevator. On its own, the elevator is not going to go against gravity. And it may go against gravity if we're putting too much force into it, for example. It would be jerky, it wouldn't be a safe system to operate. And so this is where control theory comes in. It helps us shape the behavior of this elevator so that it's safe for us to use. It's not as jerky, it's comfortable for us to ride in it and go upstairs. So control theory, even though we say that it's an invention of human intellect, feedback is one of the basic principles in biological systems.
It's naturally occurring in the sense that the systems that are naturally occurring, you can introduce some control action. How can I introduce a species that is going to control the population of, for example, rabbits in the field? So it's ubiquitous right now in our technological world, and you can find it in the cruise controls of your cars or even planes. More recently, I've seen it being included, for example, in multimedia devices when you want to stabilize the position of a camera when you're taking a shot. My focus is on designing algorithms that have two main areas of action. First one is I want to ensure that whatever we're designing is robust. And the other one is that we have good performance. And robustness is of utmost importance because, for example, if you want to implement something that is going to go inside of a car, you would like to have those control systems to be robust against arbitrary disturbances that you didn't model in your lab.
So we are especially interested in something that we call hybrid dynamical systems. These are systems where you have interactions between the digital world and the physical world. Whenever you interconnect a computer with a physical system, then you get a hybrid system. We need to be able to understand how to model these systems, how to control these systems, how to optimize these systems. So that's what we do. We try to design controllers, and we try to understand also how these hybrid systems behave, how they should be modeled, to achieve particular tasks. And we're especially interested in something called adaptive control or adaptive systems, where the goal is to induce adaptive behaviors. So we would like these hybrid systems to be able to react without external inputs from humans to changes in the environment, for example, or to disturbances. So if there is some fault in a power grid, then we would like to be able to have an autonomous controller that in real time and without external inputs from humans is able to recover the system to some particular level.
My main interests are in model-free control and optimization. Sometimes our models of the physical processes that we have are not accurate, or they involve some parameters that are not known to the engineer who's designing the controller that's supposed to influence the behavior of this physical system. And so here comes the importance of model-free control and optimization, in the sense that we don't want to invest too much time in trying to model the underlying system. If there are unknown parameters or if the model is changing in time, then by interacting with the system in a clever way, we can extract information and then we can use that information in shaping the behavior of the system to our desired goals.
So control theory is cool because I think it allows us, first of all, to have a good understanding of our world. We operate under inputs and outputs, and then we react to events. And how do we react to events? That's essentially decision making. And it allows us to actually map those ideas into math. By leveraging these mathematical principles, then we can synthesize algorithms that you can go and implement in a computer, in some hardware, and then see this algorithm in practice, actuating on your application of interest. And then you can see how math goes from equations to actual applications. And I think that's fascinating. UC San Diego has a really unique, offers a very unique environment to do research in control theory. There is a long tradition of control theorists here at UC San Diego. The fact that we have this interaction between multiple labs in different domains really gives our students the ability to collaborate with multiple professors, to learn different subjects, and to be exposed to the state of the art, essentially, in control theory. In a beautiful city like San Diego, where you can go to the beach any day, a few blocks from here, I think that makes this a very special place.
So with this understanding of controllers, it's we see the complexities that go on with many different moving parts to a system and how hard it is to control them all. This brings out the question of the loss of control of AI. Could an advanced AI agent break out of human control? Could humans lose control of artificial intelligence systems? Loss of control is viewed by the scientists who work on AI as loss of behavioral control, loss of operational control, and loss of systemic control. Loss of behavioral control or emergent autonomy. This occurs when the agent acts contrary to operator intent. It's not because it's self-aware, it's because the optimization process produces unintended strategies like reward hacking or deceptive behavior and reinforcement learning. In this instance, we're using military examples, but you can imagine this in both civilian and military contexts as happening. Loss of operational control or tool or environment misuse. If a dark agent has access to infrastructure or automation tools, even simple ones, it may send messages at uncontrolled scale, scrape data beyond intended bounds, create additional synthetic accounts, overwhelm systems or channels unintentionally. What's going on here is it's a technical issue. It's basically like a runaway event with different processes it's engaging in on a technical level. Loss of systemic control or distributed emergence across networks. This is the highest level scenario and aligns most closely with complex systems theory. Here, a dark agent could be replicated across multiple criminal servers, be modified by different operators, interact with other agents in unpredictable ways, form part of a larger emergent system that no individual controls. And this is mirrored in botnet evolution, distributed malware ecosystems, and darknet market fragmentation. So these already, have parallels in cybercrime that already exists. A lot of people viewed loss of control as occurring at different depth levels or to different severities. The least severe is deviation. The moderate one is bounded loss of control. Then there is strict loss of control, which is basically an existential threat. The way to manage these things is not to try and stop emergence from happening, but to manage emergence. And there are certain recommendations we can use to how we work with AI and agentic AI. We can have diversity requirements, friction insertion, reflexivity audits, human override protocols, and emergence-aware testing. All these can be implemented. The next area we want to look at is the question of, with all these moving parts, these different components of a complex system, in terms of agentic AI, if there are moving parts of decentralized agents, say agent A, B, and C, with no overseer, no human overseer, no machine oversight, basically they run as equal agents. You can create epistemic and systemic threats. By epistemic we mean epistemology, or beliefs or knowledge, or, reframing the risk from intelligence to feedback. Public discourse on AI risk frequently centers on the capabilities, intentions, or alignment of large language models. This focus obscures a more immediate and structurally significant source of danger: decentralized agents, including those with minimal intelligence and are based on simple rules. A decentralized agent is, basically any agent with no oversight or no overseer. Decentralization is an instability multiplier. Decentralization magnifies risks by removing systemic safeguards. And that's the problem with not having oversight. There's no global controller. Failures lack a single point of detection. Errors propagate through imitation and adaptation. Rollback is impossible once agents fork and persist. Now, one of the problems is agents learning from agents. There's such a thing as agent-to-agent protocols. In decentralized environments, agents often react not to the external signals to the outputs of other agents. This creates second-order feedback loops. And basically what you get is failures lack a single point of detection. Now, we said this was an epistemic destabilization. AI as an epistemic amplifier. LLMs introduce three destabilizing properties absent in prior belief-dominant systems: high gain, low friction, and feedback coupling. What happens in here is, again, dealing with loops and epistemology and beliefs. The beliefs of AI can start to become a closed loop. Basically a closed loop where the beliefs outputs are also the inputs to the beliefs. And this creates the possibility of autocatalytic epistemic drift, where beliefs amplified by AR are fed back into training or preference signals, reinforcing themselves independently of empirical validity. This autocatalytic epistemic drift creates a loop between the AI and that which is influencing, which is society itself, but it's also training on society. So you can see how it's going to basically end up in a mean state, like a mean reverted state, like a basic average grayed out state. Well, I don't want to get too much into the maths, but you can study how the loop is formulated. High gain influence without feedback. Control theory predicts instability when high gain influence systems lack negative feedback and external reference frames. And this is interesting because there's no, like, if there's no, not adequate, like, negative feedback and there's nothing to correct the beliefs within the system, say through a human in the loop overseer, what you get is reality becomes distorted, it becomes unreal, it becomes fantastical. You get like this systemic divergence. From an unstable system, you get durable, unmoored societies. Societies that are just kind of out there, but still functioning. Self-reinforcing epistemic bubbles and AI LLMs and conspiratorial beliefs, and this is an interesting thing to study, is escalating loops reinforce a narrative of Ukrainian persecution of ethnic Russians to justify the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Now, what starts to happen is the AI algorithms generate conspiracy-laden content in these information operations. And it starts to become sort of a self-reinforcing wave or energy forms, where it's just kind of like feeding into itself and becoming more volatile. So that conspiratorial prompts creates polarizing outputs, and which creates confirmation bias, and that leads to extremist actions. Self-reinforcing influence loops is when Agent A is speaking and interacting with Agent B, and Agent B is interacting with Agent C, and Agent C is completing the loop and speaking back to Agent A again. What happens here is this is how the external reference frame gets lost. In a healthy system, agents ultimately reference something. Physical reality, ground truth data, a conserved quantity, a human supervisor, a human in the loop. But in circular influence, say a decentralized circular agentic network, the errors propagate and they re-enter the system, then they get reinterpreted as inputs or signals, and then they're amplified on each pass. Each time this happens, it gets more and more amplified. Like, this is like the growing energy inside a wave kind of phenomena I was referring to. And these can occur in many different ways in financial markets, social media, radicalization pipelines. In the Soviet Union, there was a certain epistemic test you had to pass for your agricultural policies to be acceptable. Leninist Marxism had this very strange anti-scientific. For scientific socialism, they had a lot of anti-scientific ways about them. Then there are intelligence failures, such as the United States claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Financial ratings crises, military escalation loops, etc., etc. Whenever agents primarily react to each other's instead of the world, the system will eventually believe something that is internally consistent and externally false. It's not an AI problem, it's a control problem. This is a control loop. It doesn't have to be AI for this to happen, it just has to be any machine set up to perform these loops. So this is how things can start to appear in your society to be like unmoored from like previous beliefs or past history. Things start to take on like like I said, fantastical caliber to everything or style to everything. Things just don't seem like they're naturally progressing out of anything, but can seem like bizarre, I guess, or weird, or, you know. And one of the problems that comes out of this is the system itself can make fabricated reality become real, because the fabricated reality is being pushed at scale by the AI systems, so that such a scale, and you repeat something enough, it becomes true, takes on a reality of itself, even though it created the fabrication in the first place. Now, one of the things that happens is that in escalating loops with the decentralized agents, former allies can be very vulnerable to suddenly escalating against each other. And allies, they share assumptions and outlooks, reuse models of each other, and trust historical baselines like they're friends, so they have a shared history and they can rely on each other. There is trust there. But when epistemic drift starts to occur, anomalies stand out more. Deviation is interpreted as betrayal. Surprise accelerates threat inference. Of course, we can look at the United States and Europe right now for a very clear, example of this. One of the interesting things is the closer that the alignment history, how similar and how much they've interacted and worked together as allies, the sharper the escalation curve. It can escalate very quickly between these very aligned allies. Self-similarity fuels escalation dynamics. And it's this odd thing that when you're similar, that the slightest deviation can escalate your perception of conflict. Self-similarity, cultural, linguistic, historical, intensifies conflict. Anger and loss of face fuel aggression and retaliation. Shared perceptions skewed by mirrored grievances lead to rapid escalatory responses. We could cite the United States and Canada, we could cite the United States and Europe, particularly with Denmark and Greenland currently. But the main point that I always looked at was Russia and the Ukraine. Two very similar people. The largest diaspora of Ukrainians lives in Russia. The largest diaspora of Russians lives in the Ukraine. So misinterpretation can lead to doctrine. Once escalation begins, internal narratives form to explain it. Narratives justify further action, and action generates confirming signals. So you get the more cowboy actions that America performs in the Caribbean and towards Venezuela, the more justified it is, and the more accepting it is to the populace. Belief becomes a strategic infrastructure. Backing down into uncertainty feels impossible. New action provides corroboration. Escalation is locked in. And this is an emergent property of epistemic drift that is occurring because of these closed loops where AI influences society and the AI trains on the society it influences, creating some very strange developments as far as historical continuation goes with the past. But we can look at ungrounded agents, those who have undergone epistemic drift. Their epistemic characteristics rely on internal signals over external data, treat correlation as causation. They overweight recent events. Their discount factor is set to 1. They believe in short-term gains, not long-term stability. And they discard disconfirming evidence as noise or deception, calling everything fake news. Their behavioral traits: escalate just in case. They harden rules quickly, reduce tolerance for ambiguity, interpret restraint as hostile deception. So if you do nothing, they think you're trying to fool them. Their interaction patterns: they mirror each other's posture. They synchronize aggression. They converge rapidly on shared narratives and lose internal variance. The groupthink starts to take effect, and this is part of the graying out, mean reverted society I refer to. And from a control theoretic perspective, from a systems view, ungrounded agents show high gain, strong reactions, short memory, recency bias, minimal damping, no cooldowns, no external reference signals. And this is a very, important thing to understand, that they don't view things that come outside of whether it's their decision agency or their cultural milieu, as being valid. This guarantees oscillation or runaway behavior, loss of control. And this all brings us to emergent autonomous deception. We're going to next discuss influence and deception, information operations conducted by artificial intelligence. This concludes the section on emergence.